Nigeria's borrowing strategies for 2016 can be described as commendable, but the debts framework needs to be domesticated. That's according to the Senate Committee Chairman on Foreign and Local Debts, Senator Shehu Sanni. In an interview with Channel's business producer, Tempo Ashaju, the lawmaker explains the views of the National Assembly on Nigeria's debt profile.
What we need to understand is that there is the urgency for the federal government to prosecute its budgets and implement its economic policies. And this cannot be done without the debt issue becoming a major factor in it. And the government needs to borrow, to be able to finance projects and finance its budget. And what we have to take into cognizance is the very fact that borrowing should not be done indiscriminately, and that necessitates the setting up of the DMO office. And also the Debt Management Act of 2003 have set regulations and principles for which monies can be borrowed and applied for services, for infrastructure, and for governance generally. And the appreciation from this is the very fact that without borrowing, a lot of things will not be done. Developed societies have seriously used the instrument of borrowing to reinforce their economy, resuscitate it when there are problems, and also to further meet up the services expectations of their government. And these should be an inspiration to us and also a model for us to go through. I understand this concept in such a way that debt has piled up in many states, and some of them could not even be able to pay. But this is the general sense of the economic situation in which we find ourselves. Most states cannot pay salaries, and they can't implement capital projects. And the federal government itself has a budget of almost 6 trillion, and part of this budget will have to be implemented by borrowing. And as such, the need to sensitize the public and create awareness on why there is a need to borrow and why there is the need when you borrow to apply it for the purpose which you borrow is as necessary as the borrowing itself.
Does the National Assembly think any part of the DMO Act of 2003 is due for any form of amendment?
The DMO Act 2003 is a very comprehensive document. It has been a guiding principles and rules to which debts were managed and how governments are guided on how to borrow and what to borrow and when to borrow. And if there is anything that needs to be done now is strict compliance with that very act as it is. And the best way to go about it is to see that the existing synergy between the legislature and the executive arm of the state is further strengthened. But I have seen some areas where there are some weaknesses in terms of the implementation of that act. And those have to do with the lack of awareness by even people in the seat of government at state and local level on what that act is all about. So what we need to do now is to domesticate the act in the conscience of Nigerians and people in government, and to know that there are guiding principles on how monies can be borrowed and how it can be used and how it can be paid, and the implications of doing things contrary to what the Act clearly stated. So this is the only area I believe that we can do a lot of work there.
Now, states will be eligible to a 90 billion naira loan put together by the federal government on a fiscal sustainability framework that has now been amended. What do you make of this as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Government bailing out states should not be permanent and should be temporary for them to be able to implement reforms internally and then pick up from there. Bailout is not a permanent strategy. It is an intervention to resuscitate and give life back to something that is almost at the point of death. So I can say that the Parliament, we at the legislature, we are very sensitive and aware of this. And what we always recommend is that when you collect bailout funds for purpose, use it for that very purpose.
Well, that's it on today's edition of the program. Businesses and the financial markets resume on Friday after the 3-day holiday to celebrate Eid al-Fitr. And we're back to you when the markets resume. We'll keep our eyes on everything as it happens. I'm Harriet Agbini. Bye-bye.